Hey, welcome to Oakland, California, here at the Oakland Coliseum, getting ready for Chiefs Raiders. This is what it is all about. I'm Chiefs reporter BJ Kissel, joined, as always, by 10-year NFL veteran linebacker Shawn Barber. Shawn, I know last week you got a little excited going down to Jacksonville, but this has to be a whole different level.
Man, back in the black hole here at the Coliseum. Kind of feel like Gladiator, you know, like the Spaniard. I'm about to go out there. I don't know what to expect, but I know the Chiefs got to stick together.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. Both these teams are 1-0, have to feel good about what they did last week. The Raiders took care of business over the Broncos, and Chiefs obviously went down to Jacksonville, took care of business there as well. But if you watch that game against the Broncos, this crowd was into it. This team was energized. These guys are a confident group. We had the whole Antonio Brown saga that they kind of rallied around, but this team was excited. They were going out there playing for each other. It seemed like a whole different deal. The Chiefs are going to have to weather that storm today.
Yeah, you know, Gruden, that's the one thing he wants to air. He wants to have an arrogance about him, confidence. He wants that to, like, this streamline and be felt throughout every aspect of Raider Nation. The offense, he wants them quick. He wants them to be able to score from anywhere. In defense, he wants that defensive mentality to be one that smacks you in the face, hits you in the face, and try to get you off the field. It's going to be a test today to see if the Chiefs Nation can come through.
Yeah, bringing over Vontaze Burfict this offseason, a guy who has history with their defensive coordinator, Paul Gunther, from their time together in Cincinnati. We'll get more into that later in the show, but that's one of those reasons that you see that excitement from the defense. And one thing when you talk about Andy Reid, AFC West, the Raiders, is the dominant performances that we've seen from the Chiefs against AFC West teams. They've won 21 of their last 23 games over the AFC West. We saw the Chiefs last year put up 75 points in 2 games against this Raiders defense. I think when you talk about this matchup, it's hard because their friendship doesn't affect what happens out on the field. But the fact that Andy Reid and John Gruden are friends, that goes back to their time together, back all the way to 1992 with the Green Bay Packers. For somebody who played the game, just have you gone up against good friends? Are you a little more fired up because you want those bragging rights because you're going to talk to them so much?
Oh, definitely. You know, you have friends that go back beyond your playing days. But as you can tell, around the field is a white line. And we say when you cross that line, there is no more friends. The difference between being friendly and having a friendship is out there between these lines. It all, you know, you lay it on the line. And so I think that, you know, Gruden and Coach Reid, they got a past, they got a history, but each one of them are going to be so intent about beating the other one for the next 60 minutes. It should be a great ball game.
Yeah, and the Chiefs have had good success against the Raiders. Andy Reid 10-2 in his career over the Raiders. And we just want to say thank you for everybody who's watching this right now. We are streaming this on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on the Chiefs app. So wherever you're watching, we appreciate it. Keep those comments going wherever you're at. Let's go into the inactives. Just a little bit ago, I left the officials meeting. I know there was some buzz on social going into this game of whether or not that left tackle Eric Fisher would play because of that groin injury he had at the end of practice on Friday. He is active and will start today for the Chiefs, so that's good news. But the big one isn't a surprise because we knew it coming in, but Tyreek Hill is out, and the question is, can Sammy Watkins do it again?
Well, we talk about the scouting report on the Chiefs. Everybody knows it's about one thing. Even Gruden said it on his Silver and Black show. The scouting report against the Chiefs is all about one thing: speed. That's all it is. Can we create that same speed and that intentionality from the safeties to try to double and try to make sure that they still see our offensive spread as a speed-first offense? So I think that we have Mecole Hardman. We have a couple other receivers that can put into Tyreek Hill's place and still showcase that speed all over the field.
Yeah, you got Demarcus Robinson. Obviously, we saw Sammy Watkins go off 9 catches, 198 yards, and 3 touchdowns last week against the Jaguars. And then this week, you already talked about Mecole Hardman. They actually also brought up Byron Pringle from the practice squad, and he is active today, so that's a guy to keep an eye on if they want to spread things out and go like 4 wide. Pringle could be a guy to keep an eye on. But when you talk about Mecole Hardman, because of his skill set and what they had so many packages with Tyreek Hill where you do all the ghost action, the pre-snap motion. The defenses still have to respect if Mecole Hardman, he might not be the same player right now that Tyreek Hill is, but they still have to respect it because of that speed that you just mentioned.
I think if we go back to preseason, though, you know, there was a time in the period where we didn't even know if Tyreek Hill was going to be here. And so that gave the Chiefs a good chance to really put together some packages without him being here, not knowing that he was going to get injured. So going back to that training camp film and being able to see some different ways and some different offensive philosophies but still let the team be effective without Tyreek Hill, I think will pay dividends here today.
Yeah, and the last inactive note here is on the Raiders side, and that we know that based on earlier this week, Jonathan Abram, their rookie safety, was put on IR, a guy that all the Chiefs coaches this week, even Eric Bieniemy, when I talked to him, spent a lot of time talking about how impressed they were with Jonathan Abram, and they never like to see a guy get hurt, but I'm sure they didn't mind not having to game plan against him. But the other interesting one is that cornerback Garyon Conley, who was carried off on a stretcher last week during their game against the Broncos, had the neck injury, was limited at practice all week, and he's active today. Number 21 is going to be out there for the Raiders, and that's something to keep an eye on when he's coming up and run support and all those different things. Is how does that injury that he had last week that looked really scary, how does that affect him coming into this one?
Man, my last play on the field was me coming off the field because of a neck injury. And I know when you have a neck injury on that field and you feel that tingling sensation going down your spine and you can barely move your arms and stuff, that's a scary feeling. And to see Garyon Conley be on the field for 12, 15 minutes, get taken off on a stretcher, and now coming back the next week to play, you know it's a must-need situation for them as far as their secondary. They must be a little bit afraid, a little bit scared of the speed we have on our receiver core.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's go into our 3 keys to watch or things to watch in this game today. And the first one, I think it's going to be the same, just mark it in and pen every single week, is Patrick Mahomes. And the storyline coming into this one was he had the ankle injury against the Jaguars last week, stayed in the game, never missed any time, and then didn't miss any time at practice this week, got all the reps that he needed. But knowing that Eric Fisher had that groin injury, he might not be 100% today, but he'll be out there. And you saw the Raiders get after it a little bit up front against Joe Flacco, held on to the ball a little bit if we want to get really technical with what happened when you watch those sacks. But how does the Chiefs offense look with Patrick Mahomes might not be 100% to get outside the pocket and do all those things? Just how does that change their game plan coming into this one?
Well, I think we can actually look at taking a page out of the Raiders book from last week. Getting the ball out your hand very quickly, 3-step, using the screen game and the jet screen game to get to alleviate some of that pass rush on Pat Mahomes. One of the things I saw last night while listening to Black and Silver was Jim Plunkett was talking about how Pat Mahomes' lower body injury will make him focus more on his delivery, and we might see a more accurate, if that's the thing, more accurate Pat Mahomes because he doesn't have that lower body strength to really push off his lower body. So we might see an improved Patrick Mahomes out here today.
All right, and to wrap up things on the Raiders' defensive side here on this point right here, when it comes to Patrick Mahomes, is what we saw last week. You're talking about Cleveland Farrell, the number 4 overall pick in this draft, had a sack last week, although I would say that's more of a coverage sack when you go back and watch. Flacco stood in the pocket for a long time before he got that sack, but still a highly talented kid who's got great coaches. Brenson Buckner is a coach that their assistant D-line coach that Eric Bieniemy knows a little bit, spoke about him this week, and he said if he knows anything about Coach Buckner, those guys are going to be fired up, and they will give 100% effort every single play. It's something to keep in mind. And then Benson Mawaya had 2 sacks. The other defensive end for the Raiders had 2 sacks last week against Joe Flacco. Again, one of those was right after Jawan James, the right tackle for the Broncos, came out, and it wasn't, I wouldn't say the greatest move in the world as much as it was just oversetting the right tackle, but that is something to keep in mind with that pass rush. You want to give Pat time, and you know he's going to tear a defense apart. But the other one, putting pressure on Derek Carr. Because for a guy, you know he's going to get rid of the ball quickly, so if it's not going to come from the edge rushers, it's got to come from up the middle, which means Chris Jones. And Chris Jones will be going up against their 2 backup offensive guards because Richie Incognito, who's scheduled to be a guard, is still out with suspension, and Gabe Jackson is still out with that knee injury. So they got backups, one of which is Jordan Devey, somebody that we know very, very well.
Yeah, from seeing Jordan Devey in the past, we know that Chris Jones, Noddy, those guys, I expect those guys to have a field day up front penetrating that A-gap. That's the way, if a quarterback decides to get it out of his hand early and often, and they're going to stick with 3-step, you got to penetrate the A-gaps, or you have to do what J.J. Watt has done so effectively for so many years. You got to create that picket fence. Yep. Get your hands up, knock balls down, batted balls. That has to be an important part, a focus of our team to help our secondary with those short routes. Yeah,
the quarterback's getting it out quickly, as defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo told us earlier this week. If the quarterback's getting rid of the ball quickly and you can't affect him, then you better affect the receivers. Yes. You better get up and press, jam, whatever you got to do to confuse them, try to get their timing off a little bit. Get him to move his feet a little bit, throw that timing off. But the one matchup that we talked about during the tease that I want to give you a chance to talk about real quick is Frank Clark on Colton Miller, their second-year left tackle.
Well, Frank Clark, we know, has an awesome array of hand moves. He goes speed, he goes power, he has quickness. He has an inside window rush, and he has an outside bull rush. But what he's done against Colton Miller in the past is just man versus child. He's displaced him, deposited him in the quarterback's lap, so many times that I think that's just a matchup for the ages. That's going to be something you want to watch every play, because when he does it, it's going to be magic. It's going to be something that you haven't seen before. So watch Frank Clark versus Milton.
Yeah, he's going to be getting out. He doesn't care if he's doubled. He's going to fight through it. And our last point here real quick, and you mentioned him earlier, to me it's Derek Nottie. Oh, yeah. Because Derek Carr, you looked at the success that the Raiders had offensively last week, particularly on third down. They converted 7 of 8 third down attempts in the first half, but all 7 of those that they converted were 3rd and 5 or less. I believe 4 of them were actually 3rd and 1. So the key is get them in 3rd and long. Get them in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, which means on 1st and 2nd down, you're stuffing the run up the middle, which to me is Derek Nottie. Not a guy whose name's going to be called a whole lot, but he played pretty well against the Jaguars. You saw him stuff a lot of those plays that allowed those 3rd and longs to happen, where the Chiefs defense was able to tee off and make some plays on Gardner Minshew on those few plays. So you know that the offense only needs the defense to get a few stops. They're going to go down and keep scoring. To me, Derek Nottie's the key to make those 1st and 2nd down stops, so it becomes 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 instead of 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3.
No doubt. Derek Nottie has been an awesome guy in the community. He's done great things. The NFLPA Community Athlete of the League in Week 1. But when it comes to stopping the run, Derek Nottie does a great job, not always coming up on the stats as tackles, but he demands a double team. He has an amazing push. He resets the line of scrimmage in the backfield of the Raiders today. So we should see our linebackers being able to attack downhill and making tackles for loss.
All right, that's all we got right now, but we're going to send it up to the radio booth to Mitch Holthus and Kendall Gammon, and they're going to talk about the balance between protecting Patrick Mahomes, keeping guys in, and then attacking down the field and spreading them out. Mitch?
Well, we're both shedding a tear here.
Yes,
for
it is rough.
the last scheduled trip to the Coliseum. I've already got that one this week. Just save all the tweets and social media. I know there could be a playoff game here, but maybe not. But anyway, Chiefs and Raiders today. One of the interesting aspects, and to me, probably the top level here, is protecting Patrick Mahomes today. Oakland only had 13 sacks all of last year. They tormented Flacco on Monday night. He was never comfortable, 3 sacks. And Eric Fisher injured his groin on Friday. So here we are, trying to protect against – there's some good young players on this Oakland team, and they want to get after Pat Mahomes. Yeah,
and definitely with Patrick Mahomes having that ankle and being bummed up a little bit, not going to be as mobile as he would like, although he healed up this week. But whoever mans that left tackle spot, and of course we saw Eric Fisher working out earlier, so that's a game-time decision. But you've got to understand, whoever comes in there, it's that next man up concept, and basically the issues that how Andy Reid talks about it is, I don't care who it is. You know, you're always one play away from being a starter, and whether it's Eric Fisher or whether somebody has to come in there, you've got to understand that you've got that guy back there that makes it all go.
One thing that's fascinating about Andy Reid's approach is, one, it's actually next men up, because he can –
right.
This offense is built to have a whole bunch of guys like fill in the gap. But two, and you've talked about this a lot, protecting Patrick Mahomes without blocking anybody. Explain that, because – Coach Reid has a way of slowing down pass rushers without even blocking them.
Well, you see it. You either see a cheetah, of course you won't see him today, or you see McCole Hardman, somebody going in motion one way or the other, or you have a fake going one way or the other. Now you pull that defensive end or a linebacker away, going one direction, because they get sucked in by the motion. So nobody touches them, but if they take a couple steps in the wrong direction, they've effectively been blocked without being touched. So again, that's kind of a scheme thing, and I don't think anybody does it any better than Big Red.
Flipping to the other side, the Raiders have changed their approach to me. Last year, Derek Carr was sacked 51 times in 16 games. Just do the math. This year, it appears to me, after that Denver game, ball's coming out fast, slants, 2-step goes. They're not going back there at 7 steps and patting the ball. So to me, it's more disrupting or deflecting. You may not get sacks today.
Yeah, to that point, 16 of 18 last week on passes of 2.5 seconds or less. So Derek Carr, to your point, is getting the ball out of there quickly and effectively. And he made mention of the fact that, there's no 9-point play or 20-point play. You just take whatever you get. If it's 8, 9 yards, and you walk it down the field. And he had a lot of success, certainly with Waller in the tight end. He's kind of a breakout guy. He's been in the league several years, had some issues off the field. And to his credit, he's done a nice job of handling that, but he was on fire last week for Oakland.
You're going to want to listen to this game all throughout the day. It's the present and the past. Chiefs and Raiders here, BJ.
Thanks, Mitch. That is great stuff. And right now we are going to send it to Matt McMullen, who caught up with Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy earlier this week.
I'm joined here by Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy and coach playing the Oakland Raiders this week. A team with a lot of fresh faces on defense, a lot of new energy. Saw it last week against the Broncos. They played pretty well, specifically in their pass rush. Just last week we played the Jaguars, pretty good pass rush team. What can you take from that game going into this game based on how the protection played?
One thing we want to do is making sure that we're solidifying everything, detailing the details, and obviously making the corrections that are needed to be made. We were faced with a hell of a challenge last week. We came out okay, and this week we want to be better. We'll be faced with another challenge with those guys coming off the edge and the first-round draft pick and the other kid, number 91. Those kids are pretty good players.
You mentioned it, Benson Mayo and Cleveland Farrell, two really good players in that defensive line for the Raiders, combined for 6 pressures and 3 sacks last week. So what stands out about them to you?
I mean, they're just playing with relentless effort. 91 has been around the league for a while. The other kid's the fresh kid from Clemson. That kid has some juice. I've watched him play a number of times just watching college football. But those two kids, they're playing good football. Obviously the kid Arden Key is coming in and doing some things as well. This is just a new, re-energized defense. They're playing together. They're playing with a little bit more tenacity. You can see the communication. Guys are flying around. So, hey, it's the NFL. We got to show up and play.
For sure. I want to talk about your quarterback real fast for a minute. Last week, hurt his ankle, but still went out and put out one of the best games of his career, just what Patrick Mahomes does nowadays, it feels like. Just what did you see out of your quarterback, and just how proud are you of him to see him do that tonight?
You know what? I saw Pat Mahomes, and everyone wants to talk about all the stats. One thing I appreciate about this kid is that he remains the same. He never changes. He never deviates from who he is or his character. He just goes out there and plays. He finds a way to make it happen. And although that he got a little nicked up at the time, it didn't bother him. He just continued to go out there and be relentless and be who he is.
Coach, appreciate your time. Good luck on Sunday. BJ, back to you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Good stuff with Coach Bieniemy. Shawn, right now we're going to take a little trip around the AFC West right now because obviously the Chiefs are playing the Raiders today. And right now we've got the Chargers are taking on the Lions in Detroit. Okay. And they're leading 10-6. They just missed the field goal. So obviously that one is going to be one to keep an eye on because the Chargers are going to be one of those teams that was competing in the AFC West this season. Yeah,
it looks like the Chargers have become accustomed to moving on without Melvin Gordon. They seem like Eckler is their featured running back, and they're featuring him a lot. So look for big yardage, big days from Austin Eckler, and the Chargers are doing what they're doing. Yeah, got in the end zone once already. We saw earlier today. And the big one, Denver Broncos at Chicago Bears. What do you love about this matchup? Well, the Broncos, as we know, have the Bears' old defensive coordinator as their head coach. Vic Fangio is now returning and being able to know Chicago's defense in and out. So if there's a chance to start somebody from a Broncos standpoint, it might be against Chicago today. Yeah, I think if you saw anything about the Raiders game against the Broncos last week and how Joe Flacco just stood in the pocket, you could do that against the Raiders. He got sacked 3 times. If he does that against the Bears, he's going to get sacked about 9 times. It's going to be a long day against that Bears front. Let's go back and talk a little bit of the prime time and the marquee matchup this afternoon. Let's go back to Thursday night. You had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers. We talked about this. We both had the same takeaway coming after that game. Man, watching that game, you saw 2 appalling quarterbacks going back and forth. Cam Newton and Jameson Winston, neither one of them should have any spot on your fantasy lineups from this point on. Both of them are pretty much unreliable and unaccounted for. I think from watching that game, my only takeaway was how much you appreciate having Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback because he makes the things that look he makes everything look so easy. And it's not to Jameis and Cam's credit that we are being spoiled watching Patrick Mahomes play football. But the other one I want to ask you about is the marquee one that's also the afternoon game, is the rematch of the NFC title game, the Saints at the Rams. And I saw on social media that there were a lot of Saints fans in LA wearing referee uniforms because they have not forgotten. They are not going to forget for a very long time that non-pass interference call. Hey, man, if you're a Saints fan, you 100% blame the refs for that loss last year. But that's one of the games I have as marked down as one of the highest scoring matchups of this week. Yep. So if you have any Rams or any Saints, you might want to start them in your lineup. Hey, you keep going fantasy tips. We're going to get your sleepers here in a second, but let's go through the last 2 primetime games. The first one, the Sunday night games, Eagles at Falcons. What do you like about that matchup? Well, I like the Eagles going against the Falcons. I think the Falcons' running game is almost non-existent, so I look for a high-scoring game. Carson Wentz being able to hook up with his man Ertz early and often. I would see the Eagles edging out a win out at Atlanta. Yeah, Carson Wentz to Alshon Jeffrey. That has been a great combination. Now he's got Deshaun Jackson in there making plays as well. And then finally, you've got the Browns
at the Jets, who do not have Sam Darnold. It is Trevor Siemian who is going to start for them. The Browns, they've got a lot of pressure on them with all the talk this week about Greg Williams and Odell Beckham, and there's a lot of talking going on. That one's going to be fun just because of the storylines created by media, by what people have said. I'm excited to see that one on Monday.
The Browns carry all the pressure this game. The Jets are without Sam Darnold. They're without Mosley. They're without their first-round draft pick Williams. And I think Bell was on a kind of a questionable list coming into the game. So I don't know who the Jets have besides just a little bit of arrogance, some confidence. Sometimes it's a home field game, so you got to play. It's a 7-point win by probably the Browns.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of Adam Gase. They're going to talk about him. How fired up can he get those guys, knowing all those key guys you just mentioned are out? What kind of fight do they put up in that one? But that brings us to our fantasy sleepers for Shawn Barber, a guy who loves him some fantasy ball. And your first one, quarterback, we just talked, Baker Mayfield. Why do you like his matchup against the Jets outside of all of the guys that you just talked about who won't be in that lineup?
Well, I know we say a sleeper is somebody you can find on the waiver wire, and you might have a tough time finding Baker Mayfield on the waiver wire. But after last week getting sacked 5 times and throwing 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter that all led to the opponent scoring, I would say he was kind of asleep. He was asleep last week. So we need Baker Mayfield to wake up and come around and be a part of this thing in week 2 against the Jets.
He seems like the kind of quarterback that would play with an edge. When people start doubting him and saying things about him, he's going to go plant his flag in the middle of the Jets stadium. But running back, the pride of Olathe North, you got Darren Sproles, and then you got Saints Latavius Murray as sleepers as running back. Why do you like those guys?
Well, Darren Sproles, not only being an Olathe product, but he's also that triple threat. He can get carries, he gets receptions and return yardage and return scores. And then Latavius Murray, I know a lot of people think that number 41, AK-41, is the running back in New Orleans, but they share the carries. And a lot of the goal line stuff goes to Latavius Murray. Such a high-scoring, high-powered offense. If you can get a lion's share of the goal line carries for that team, I think you need to start him.
Yeah, we saw with Mark Ingram for years that both those guys were starting fantasy running backs, which you don't normally see, especially from an offense that's led by Drew Brees. Now, your sleeper receiver, Mohamed Sanu. Why do you like him?
Man, Sanu is part of a 3-headed monster down with the Atlanta Falcons. Everybody knows about Calvin Ridley. They know about Julio. But when it gets to the red zone, my man Sanu is the guy with the height, the athleticism. He's the red zone target. So look for Mohamed Sanu being a sleeper pick for your wide receiver spot.
They got that tight end, too. He could sneak in there. Especially, and you already talked about the running game being non-existent. If that happens again and Freeman can't get it going, they're going to have to throw the ball if they're going to try to move it at all.
Hey, so you got to get those red zone targets from your wide receiver.
All right, now at tight end, you got the Browns' David Njoku. Why do you like that?
Njoku is a guy, we've seen him. He has a body like Zeus. Looks like Tarzan out on the field. This guy's all over the place. But you know, from a defensive standpoint, you got to take away OBJ. You got to take away Juice, right? You got to guard Chubb. So with those 3 guys getting all the attention, it's got to be a matchup thing where David Njoku has the best matchup on the field. Again, red zone beast.
Absolutely. And again, we talked about Adam Gase in that Monday night matchup. I'm curious to see how Freddie Kitchens handles all the buzz, all the talk all offseason was about the Cleveland Browns, and they put together all this all-star team. They got OBJ and made all these moves and got Baker. And now we're going to see how they respond to Freddie Kitchens going in on a game that you know everybody's going to be watching on Monday night. And finally, the one that I was most excited for you to talk about, your sleeper defense, is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Last but not least, we're going to watch that Kansas City defense flex on these Oakland Raiders. Our D-line against their O-line, our receivers playing that press coverage. Let's think turnovers, but let's be able to watch out for my man D. Thompson and Mecole Hardman on the return game. So that's what we're looking at from a big point. I'm looking at a 20-point outing from our Chiefs defense.
Andy Reid and the Chiefs have been flexing on the AFC West over the last 23 games, 21 wins, and 10-2. Like I said earlier in the show, Andy Reid is against the Raiders. And we've got some records to watch in this game because you start winning as much as the Chiefs have, you're going to start breaking some records. They have a chance to set the NFL's all-time record if they can score at least 26 points. That would be 20 straight games. They have a chance for an all-time winning record here at the Oakland Coliseum. My favorite stat coming into this week, they can ensure that they will have a winning record forever against the Raiders in O.co with the win today. Love that. Dustin Colquitt can tie Will Shields because he's appearing today in his 224th career game, which is huge. And then Andy Reid can tie Hall of Famer Chuck Noll to the all-time wins list for the NFL. So some cool records to go there right now. We got kickoff here in just around the corner. Any final thoughts before we get this one going?
Hey, the last here in the black hole, you got Andy Reid can hand over a victory to the Hunt family. Yeah. Hunt family versus Davis family. It's one for the ages, right? Oakland Raiders versus Kansas City Chiefs. His story will be made here today. I can feel the positivity coming out the computer screen, coming off your screen from Kansas City and around the world. Let's do this, baby.
I can feel from all these Chiefs fans that we got up here. We got a lot more red in the stands now than I say 5 or 6 years ago when we first started coming here. Both for these guys, love Chiefs fans, love Chiefs Kingdom representing here in Oakland, California. We will catch you after the game. You can watch it on CBS as Jim Nantz and Tony Romo have the call. And then after the game, check all the Chiefs social channels because they'll have Chiefs Rewind. Mitch Holthus and Shawn Barber will take care of you there. Other than that, we will catch you after the game. Have a great one, Chiefs Kingdom.